I've been thinking a lot lately this last week about there seems to be a general, like, these weird times that we're living in, a general anxiety over um, not knowing what might come. And I was listening to one of my Buddhist teachers, Thanissaro, and he talks about when a danger comes into our world, it always brings with it this message of anxiety. And anxiety is this sense of this message that there's some frequency of stress, something in the world that we have to be heedful of, we have to do to deal with and to face this danger, these struggles in the world. And we do everything that we can do that's in our power to protect ourselves and our loved ones from whatever we need to be heedful of and to be responsible. And the problem isn't our action of what we're doing to prevent this thing. The problem is that we have this sensation of anxiety that sits there even after we've done our job, after we've done everything that we can do to deal with the problem. And so that's where our practice starts to come in, our meditation, our yoga, is when we can start to deal with these emotions that came to us as these messages that there's something that needs our attention that we can do something about. We can stay home, we can wash our hands, we can wear our masks. We can do the things we're supposed to do just to be responsible. And when we're doing those, if you're doing something about it, you don't need that sensation of that fear and that anxiety to stick with us. But it just happens that it just kind of finds its way into our muscles and into our nerves. And through our practice, through our yoga, through our meditation, we can learn how to let go of those messages. We can hang up the phone when we've got what it's trying to tell us. And we can still live our life and be happy and be joyful and find this sense of freedom that we've always had, no matter if we're stuck in our homes for days at a time. There's always that sense of that vast open freedom and safety that lies within us. We can find our confidence within our poses, within our practice, by finding our attention. And we begin kind of by taking that moment to feel those emotions and those sensations that we have within the body, and to find all of like the physical aspects of our emotions. What do our emotions really feel like just beneath the surface of the skin? Often anxiety is something that comes just behind the solar plexus, the gut, just behind our heart. It's usually one of the middle chakras. Sometimes we tighten our jaw and hold some of our stress there. But when we find it and we become aware of it, we can know what it is that we're working through. We can begin to release some of that tension. We can begin to let go of the jaw. We can begin to notice all the little muscles around the heart and the chest. Take this moment to let them calm down with each exhalation, knowing that as we sit here in this posture, we're safe, we're comfortable. We are fulfilling everything that we need to be doing in this moment. And this moment is everything that we have and everything that we need to be doing. You can't do anything about the future that doesn't exist right now. The past has already happened. Ruminating over it doesn't help or change anything. All we can really do is bring our full awareness into what we're experiencing in this moment. So we notice this moment of getting in touch with our feelings and our sensations, finding our solar plexus and noticing what feelings might be there. What tensions can we release? What can we work through? What energies are at a frequency that we might want to use that energy into our practice, to work it out of our body and out of our muscles. Maybe finding the space just behind the gut, just behind the belly button, and noticing what it feels like to put your awareness there in the core. Taking some full breaths and noticing each inhalation with the rising belly and each exhalation. Finding this moment of peace within us. really fully living in our breath, with all of the energy that this breath of air will bring to us, and gratitude for just that breath of air, as though that's the only thing in the world that we need at this moment, and we have it. And we'll put that intention out into the world with an Om together. Take a deep inhalation with me and sing along. We can begin to open our eyes, sitting up tall. We're going to place our feet together into a butterfly, starting to warm up our hips, just finding where the hips will naturally lie as you put the outsides of the feet together, opening the insides of the feet to the mat, using your elbows to push the thighs closer to the mat, sitting up tall. Your fingers can hook over your big toes. You can open your heart, sitting tall, and bow your heart towards your toes as you bring your tailbone and your sit bones out behind you, lengthening the spine, exhaling all the way down with a flat back. Inhaling our way up to center, sitting tall. Let's bring our hands to the outside of the legs, bring those knees in together, and setting them about hip distance apart. We're going to find our way into our yogi squat, the malasana squat. Taking this moment to find those hips as we can sway from side to side just a little bit, finding where those hips will naturally pull to the mat. And finding your place back at a center, sitting tall. You place the right hand onto the mat on the outside of the right hip, and place that right leg, that right knee down to the mat as you open that left knee out to the left, opening that left hip, and then bringing our legs back to center and coming back up into our malasana squat, balancing our hips. The left hand can come down outside the left hip. That left knee can come down to the mat as you open that right leg all the way up, trying to point that right knee out to the right. Exhaling our legs back together, coming into our malasana squat, sitting tall. And both of our hands can come behind us. We're going to find a reclined deer pose. That right knee comes out to the right, that left knee comes out to the bottom of that right foot. So it's our swastikasana, both of our knees at about 90 degrees, both of our hips at about 90 degrees. We can come onto our forearms and lay back and feel ourselves breathing into that left side body and that back of the left hip as we look up and open the heart. Noticing our strength from our side body as we take a full breath of air all the way down that left leg. Inhaling again, back up to center. Bringing both of our feet back into our mulasana squat. Finding our hips on either side and bouncing left and right. And then both of our hands come back down behind us. That left knee comes out to the left. That right knee comes to the bottom of that left foot. Both knees at 90 degrees, both hips at 90 degrees. We can come onto our forearms behind us. Taking a deep breath into that right side body, all the way down that right leg, outside of the leg, all the way down to the toes. Noticing the outside of that hip becoming open, loosening. And we'll inhale our way back up the center as we sit up tall. Bring our feet back into our malasana squat. Lifting our hips. Let's lift our hips as high as our knees, bringing the knees at about 90 degrees, finding a half chair as we open our hands overhead, shoulder blades onto the back. Starting to warm up our core here in our half chair, pulling those feet and the heels together as you lengthen those hands far overhead. And grow tall, lifting up. Hands coming to our heart, Finding our mountain pose. Breathing into our mountain. Our feet come together about palm distance between the feet. As we raise up, growing both of our hands overhead, palms flat to the wall in front of us. The right hand grabs the outside of this left palm, and we exhale out to the right for our standing crescent pose, breathing into that left shoulder, that left side body, finding those ribs pulling into the core and into the center. As you exhale all the way out to the right, getting rid of all the stale air, and inhaling up to center. Lengthening through both side bodies as we lift up tall, reaching for the wall behind us, finding a gentle back bend. And inhaling back up tall. The left hand grabs the outside of that right palm, stacking the shoulders as we exhale out to the left, keeping that left side body long and the right side body expanding, hollowing out that right armpit. Exhaling out all the stale air, getting to the very bottom of your lungs. And using the core and the strength in your side body to lift yourself back up to center. Hands overhead. Exhaling to reach back. Inhaling to grow tall. And exhaling our hands to our heart. Standing tall. We're going to test our balance in a tree pose for Shasana as we step our weight onto the left foot, bringing that right knee up into standing balance. Testing our balance here for a moment, hands at our heart, keeping a strong back with the spine stacked like a pile of stones. The right hand can grab the front of that right ankle and place the heel either above or below the knee. Ideally, you get it as close to the hip as you can. Pointing those toes down, pushing that foot into your leg and engaging that outside of that right leg out and behind you. You can think of this like a half butterfly pose. So you want to be opening that leg out behind you, opening that hip. Our hands can come to our heart. We can find our stability. It helps to find a dristi, a solid point on the wall in front of you to focus on. When you have a sense of stability, we can grow our hands up tall. Maybe open the heart and find a gentle back bend. Exhaling our hands back to our heart. Bringing that foot into our standing balance. And our feet come together. We release. Walking it out. Taking a moment to regain your stability. A moment of gratitude for having 2 feet. It's a beautiful thing to have both of them. What would it be like if we had just the right foot? We bring the left foot into our standing balance, lifting that knee. Try to get that heel about as high as the hip in our standing balance. Lifting tall with the heart lifting up through the top of the head. Finding a straight spine. The left hand grab that front of the left ankle. And you place that left heel to that inside of that right thigh. Keeping that left knee, bringing it out and behind you, and feeling this hip rotate externally. Finding your stability there. Find your dristi. Open your heart. Lift tall and grow your branches for Varkshashana. Pulling those shoulder blades onto the back. Pulling the ribs into the chest. And expanding as we grow. Feel expansive. Feel free. Exhaling our hands back to our heart. Bringing our left knee into our standing balance. And setting our feet back down as we walk it out. We're going to bring our feet about twice of our hip distance, finding our wide-legged forward fold. As we bow, our hands come down to the mat. And we exhale and bring the heart as close to the mat between the heels as we can. Our hands can come to grab the outsides of each of our heels. And we can exhale to bow as we lift the tailbone up behind us. Inhale to grow tall as we look up, opening the heart. And exhale to bow. Placing a little bit of weight into our hands as we bend those knees, finding a wide-legged squat, bringing those hips as low as the knees, opening our heart, and lifting up tall into our goddess squat. Our feet can be about 45 degrees apart here as we bow into those hips, our hands overhead, bouncing our hips left to right. Our hands can come to our heart. We can exhale to bow, pointing our fingers behind our heels for the wall behind us and walking them back as you bring your heart beneath you. Your forehead can try to reach for the mat between the heels. And we inhale as we walk back up forwards, looking up, lowering those hips just another couple inches, lifting back up into our goddess squat, opening the heart, and then straightening the legs, expanding in all directions, finding the 5-pointed star. Feeling yourself grow strong in your core as you lift through the top of your head. You want these ribs and this core. You feel all the energy flowing through the center of your spine as you expand. We bring our hands to our heart. Pivot the left foot forwards, bend into our left knee, and bow over that left foot, finding our weight onto our left foot. That right heel picks off of the mat. And we're going to bring it in about hip distance apart, about 45 degrees. Bring our hands to square our hips for our pyramid pose. Hands can come to our heart, keeping that spine long, pulling our feet together, and exhaling as we bow, trying to bring that heart parallel to the mat. You can stay here, or you can add the reverse prayer if you would like to reach your hands behind your back and try to bring your fingertips together, opening our heart, pulling that tailbone and the sit bones out behind us. As you open the shoulders, bring those elbows out, almost like your arms are a butterfly in our reverse prayer. Pulling those shoulder blades down the back as you exhale and bow, and then waterfall your back over that leg as you bow and reach your forehead for your toes. Exhaling the arms out into our airplane. Hands can come down to frame that front foot. That back toe comes down to the mat. The back knee comes down to the mat. Squaring our hips. Finding Anjaneyasana, the low lunge. Growing tall, reaching our hands overhead. Lengthening through our side body. Feeling strong through our core. We'll bring our hands to our heart. Hands can come down to the mat on the exhale, straightening that left leg. Finding half splits, Ardha Hanumanasana, bowing over our left leg. And walking our hands forwards to the inside of that foot, coming to the outside of the right leg, and the right toes come up, finding Skandasana, the crouching tiger. Taking a moment to find your stability, breath here in our balance. We can lift our hips up, finding our wide-legged stance, and exhale off to the right, lifting those left toes off of the mat, finding our Skandasana. Really finding that squatting motion in the legs. We're going to go back, lifting ourselves into our forward fold, exhaling into the left leg. Noticing your stability and your balance. This time, binding our hands around our back, stacking the shoulders, looking up. Exhaling as we release, hands come to our heart. Lifting as slowly as possible into our forward fold. And exhaling as we bend into that right leg, finding Skandasana on the right side. Finding your stability. Finding that right arm around the right leg, stacking the shoulders, looking up. Pulling that left heel towards the right leg, feeling the left side body long. Exhaling as we release our hands. Bring the hands down to frame that right foot. Spin onto those left toes, those back toes. Finding our low lunge on this side. Hands come to our hips. Shoulder blades pulled down the back. Feeling this core strong, keeping this line of energy running through the spine as we pull that front foot inwards and we isometrically pull the left toes forwards, trying to strengthen those legs, strengthening the lower core as we reach our hands up. Isometrically expanding as our back is pulling those shoulder blades onto the back, reaching through the sides of the arms. Exhaling our hands back to our heart and down to frame this front foot. We're going to straighten that right knee, lifting those toes off the mat. You can point the toes and bow over the leg, Ardha Hanumanasana, or half splits. Squaring those hips, we're trying to pull that left hip forwards and up and set that right hip down a little bit lower as we bow. And walking our hands forwards to frame that right foot. Lifting our left knee off of the mat, stepping it in for our pyramid pose. Finding our stability with our feet about hip distance apart, our hips even, our spine long, and bowing into our heart is parallel to that mat. If you found our reverse prayer on the other side, we open our arms and bring them behind our back. Fingertips come together. Try to bring the heels of the hands, of our wrists together as work those little fingers up the back towards your shoulder blades, pulling those shoulder blades down the back towards your hands. Opening those elbows up behind you. Exhaling as we bow. Inhaling to rise up. Unbinding the hands. Hands come to our heart. Bending into this front knee. Our hands can come down to frame that front foot. Walking our hands around into our wide-legged forward fold, Prasarta Pada Tadasana. Exhaling as we bow. Inhaling to grow tall. Exhaling as we lift our sit bones up above us and try to bring our head between those heels. Let's walk our hands to frame that right foot with that right shoulder underneath the right leg. So we're reaching through the left side body, hollowing out that left armpit, pulling those feet together isometrically. And then walking our hands back to center, reaching them in front of us, and walking our hands to the left so that that left hand reaches underneath and behind that left heel. Reaching through that right side body, breathing as we open that the hip, and all the way through the hollowed out armpit. Full breaths into that shoulder and the back. Bring our hands back to center, hands between those toes, bending those knees so that the hips come as low as the knees. Looking up, finding our goddess squat. Our hands grow tall. Our arms long, like swords, bouncing those hips. You can bounce from side to side. Our hands come to the heart. Opening that heart. Binding those hands behind the back as we really open our heart. Trying to get your heart to point towards the ceiling as you let those hips sink. Breathing here. And exhaling as we release. Straightening those legs, expanding our arms, growing long in all directions. Hands come to our heart. We'll wiggle our feet inwards a little bit closer as we bend our knees, finding our squat. Squatting low, all the way down into a wide-legged Malasana squat. Seeing if we can rotate our hips to the left and to the right. And then lifting up very slowly, moving as slowly as possible, finding consistent motion as we expand all the way up, growing tall, wiggling our feet a little bit closer together. You can bring them about a 90-degree angle in between the heels as you reach your hands overhead. That right hand grabs that left palm and we exhale off to the right. This time, using your right big toe as a kickstand, maybe testing your balance. Coming back to center, flipping your grip, the left hand grabs that right palm and we exhale out to the left. Maybe using that left big toe as a kickstand, bending your weight on the right foot, and testing your balance, finding where it is. Our hands come back to center, to our hearts. We find our breathing, find our posture. Notice your heart beating. And we bow with a flat back, finding an L pose, trying to find a right angle between the legs and the torso, expanding as we lengthen the space between every vertebrae. You can reach your hands overhead, keeping those shoulder blades onto the back, finding a straight line between your tailbone and your fingertips. And see how much of that straight line you can keep as you bow into our forward fold, trying to lift that tailbone all the way up above us as we bow. We can look up, bring our hands to our shins, opening the heart, shoulder blades on the back. And exhale as we bow. Let's cross the right leg over the left so our little toes come together. Taking this moment to get into that IT band on that left leg as we bow over that left foot. Finding our stability. Looking up. And lifting up into a standing posture, keeping that leg crossed. Hands coming to our heart. See if we can lift that foot into standing balance. Setting that right heel to the inside that left leg, starting with our tree pose. Finding your stability here. Reaching our hands overhead. We're going to find our crescent. The right hand grabs that left palm and we exhale out to the right. Lifting that right foot out to the right. Lifting that foot as high as it will go. Our standing crescent balance. Arms can come out to a T as we step that foot out to the side. Finding our wide-legged stance. Standing tall, a long spine, and bow. Trying to keep that back very straight as we bow, so we're hinging only from the hips. Lifting that sit bone, all the sit bones, lifting them up and overhead. Let's walk our hands over to this right foot, spinning this right foot forwards, lifting that left heel off of the mat. We can lift our right hand all the way up, finding a simple twist. Opening our shoulders to stack on top of one another Bending into that right knee a little bit deeper. Exhaling our hands to frame that foot. That left knee comes down to the mat. Sitting tall into our low lunge. Lunging tall, I should say. Expanding our arms up and overhead. Sinking those hips down as we bow. We're going to come to our forearms, finding a lizard lunge, keeping that hip open and out to the right. Exhaling all the way into that right hip. You come onto that knife edge of that right foot and bring that knee out to the right. Maybe finding this pigeon lizard. Feeling that hip open, maybe lifting that left knee off of the mat, coming onto the left toe, and finding some little hula hoop circles, circling that right hip in all directions. And then placing that sole of that foot down to the mat, coming back onto our hands, coming onto the inside of the left foot, the right toes point forwards for Skandasana, lifting those left toes off of the mat. Sitting tall, feeling that right hip really open. The left hand can reach for those left toes. The right hand can stay at your heart. Lifting up into our forward fold. Both hands can reach for both toes as we bow. Your fingertips maybe hooking the big toes with the thumbs. Bending the elbows as you use the arms to pull the heart to the mat. Inhaling to release. Hands can come to our heart. Bend into this left leg, into the left knee as those right toes come up. And that right hand reaches for those toes, finding our Skandasana squat. This left elbow should be opening this left hip out to the left. As you look up, keeping our spine long, don't collapse that left side body here. Hands can come to our heart and down to the mat. And we'll walk them forwards. Lunging into this left leg. Finding this lunge as long as it was on the other side. Anjaneyasana. Our hips and shoulders in alignment as we grow tall. Keeping ourselves strong in our core as we reach up. Breathing all the way through the hips with each exhale, letting those hips sink a little bit closer to the mat, bowing into that left knee, and then bringing our hands down to the inside of this left foot. Our forearms come down to the mat. We try to put our weight into the left hip, letting it open up under the strength of gravity, our own weight opening up our leg. You can come onto that knife edge of the left foot as that left knee points out to the left. Finding this hyper pigeon, maybe lifting that right knee off of the mat, tucking those right toes, and finding our hula hoop circles in each direction, working all four corners of this left hip. Finding where it works for you, finding where that tension is that we can work out, spending a little bit of extra time there. And then we place the sole of that foot back to the mat, coming back onto our hands, spinning that back foot forward, spinning the left toes forwards, finding our forward fold. Oh wait, we gotta come back over to our left side, into our low lunge, and find our simple twist here. So bowing the left knee just over the heel, finding this long low lunge. The left hand reaches up, so we stack the shoulders. Trying to reach for that ceiling, pulling that shoulder onto that back. You can lift that right knee off of the mat if you like. Exhale our hands back down to the mat. And then we'll walk into our forward fold. Exhaling to bow. Walking our hands behind our heels as we bow our hips to about the height of our knees,
Maybe making a shelf with your arms, trying to keep those arms, or bend in the arms, our fingertips pointed forwards. See if you can lift that right foot off of the mat, pointing those toes, lifting that leg, and setting it down. And we'll try that left leg. See if you can lift that left leg up and off of the mat, and setting it down. Lifting our hips, straightening the legs as we bow. Coming up tall, finding our 5-pointed star as we expand. Bending our knees, hips sink, shoulders pull onto the back, our goddess squat. Giving yourself a little dance to the left and to the right. And then we'll exhale to grow tall, wiggling our feet in just a little bit closer. And exhaling down into our squat, this time squatting a little bit lower, a little bit lower. See if we can squat into a malasana squat, pulling those heels together, isometrically rotating those toes apart. So we're really opening those hips. Those arms can reach around, reaching for the hips. Feeling your shoulders open. You can rotate left to right. And exhale to release as we move as slowly as possible to stand up tall, lifting up, expanding in all directions, wiggling our feet together. We're going to cross our left leg over the right as we bow, bowing into that. Bowing over the left leg, our little toes together, the outsides of our feet apart. We can walk our fingers behind us and lift our tailbone, keeping the spine long, reaching the forehead for the toes. And when that leg feels open, your balance feels stable on the right leg, we can lift up. Lifting this left leg into our standing balance. Testing your stability here. And finding that left hand to the left ankle. The heel comes to the inner thigh, either above or below the knee. Pushing this hip out behind us. Finding our stability. Lifting up tall. Squeezing that foot into that leg that gives us strength. The more we engage, pulling everything inwards, the more stable we are as we lift through the top of the head, expanding the spine, pulling the ribs and the core in towards the back muscles, pulling those back muscles up, and the shoulder blades down onto the back, lifting through the top of the head, and growing our branches, finding our Vrikshasana. We can bring that left knee into standing balance as the left hand grabs the outside of the right palm. We exhale out to the right, finding our standing crescent. That left foot lifts out to the left. Lifting that foot and exhaling to the left. Setting that foot down. Hands in cactus arms, shoulder blades on the back. Bending those knees. Finding our goddess. We can bind our hands behind our back, opposite finger on top, opening our heart as we bow. Letting those hips sink as low as they'll comfortably go, and then lifting up tall, keeping the bind as we bring our shoulders over the left foot, pointing those left toes forwards, bowing over that left leg, bending into that left knee, finding a warrior 3 with the bind, lifting that right heel up and behind us, pointing out through that right heel, trying to get the heel as high as the hips. Setting those back toes down to that mat. Hands come to our heart. Finding a high lunge. Hips square, arms grow overhead. We'll find our crescent here. That left hand just grabs that outside of that right palm, and we exhale out to the left. Inhaling to grow tall. And then the opposite, that right hand grabs the left palm, and we exhale out to the right. Pulling those feet inwards and together, pulling that left hip back, that right hip pulls forwards, using that action in the core to keep yourself stable. Hands come back to center and down to frame this left foot. The left hand grows tall, finding our simple twist. Bowing into this left hip. Our hands come to the inside this leg, and we find Skandasana. Maybe finding a bind, or reaching for your toe, or you can bring your hands to the mat in front of you. See if you can lift this left toe, the left foot up and off the mat. Testing your balance, testing your strength, setting this left foot back down. Hands come to our heart, and we're going to lift ourselves up and bow in our forward fold, bending those knees, finding this goddess squat. Hands can reach tall. Find that straight spine. Keep the spine straight as we bring the heart parallel to the mat. Hands come down between the heels. Walking our hands behind the heels, creating a shelf with the arms so that the backs of the thighs can find those triceps. And we'll see if we can lift that right foot up and off the mat. And then maybe lift that left foot up and off the mat. Or maybe you lift both feet. Test your balance, find what works for you. Maybe a TT Basana. If you can't straighten those legs, you can bring those toes in as though it's a floating butterfly, or Bhujangasana. Finding whatever works for you, and meeting me in our wide-legged forward fold. As we bow, our spine comes long, our hands to our heart, 90-degree angle between the legs and the torso. We bend into that right leg, lifting those left toes off of the mat, finding Skandasana on the opposite side, finding our bind. If you found that on the other side, as you open those shoulders, maybe the left hand reaches for those left toes. Maybe both of your hands can come down to that mat on the inside of that right leg, that right toe, and you test your strength as you lift the right foot off of the mat and set it down, finding what works for you, finding where it is, finding this half crow. Setting that foot back down, walking our hands forwards to frame that right foot, spinning the left heel up, and bowing that right knee over that right heel, finding our high lunge, and lifting up tall, expanding, lengthening both side bodies as we bow into that right leg and pull the left hip forwards, pulling those feet together isometrically against the mat. Our palms face forward. The right palm grabs that left wrist. You give those carpal tunnel bones in the wrist a little massage as we exhale out to the right. Opening up that left hip and pulling it forwards, using our core to grow ourselves tall. Hand back to center. The left hand grabs that right wrist. Give the wrist a little massage as we exhale off to the left. Hollowing out that right armpit. Lengthening both side bodies so you don't let your left side body collapse. You keep it strong. Lifting up tall, feeling strong in both side bodies. Our left hand comes forward, the right hand comes back. The left hand onto the inside of the right foot. Finding our simple twist as you are still pulling that left hip in. Let's see if you can push this right hip down and pull it back. Finding our simple twist. Finding our weight onto that right leg as the hands grow long and the heart revolves till your heart is parallel to the mat. You can bind those hands behind the back, opposite fingers on top, opening the heart, bending into that right knee, putting your weight onto that right foot, and see if you can lift that left foot off the mat. Virabhadrasana 3, the warrior pose, warrior 3. Opening the heart, lifting that back heel, pushing it out through that left heel. Breathing here, finding your stability, finding a long spine. Bending into that right knee and setting our left foot down long. Our feet come parallel to the short edge of the mat, toes point forwards. We can release the bind and let our hands come down for Prasarnapada Tadasana. Taking a moment as we bow. Inhaling up tall. And exhaling again to release. Exhaling, getting rid of all our stale air. Bending our knees to the level of our hips as we rise into our goddess squat. Keeping our feet about 45 degrees. Hands come to our heart. And down to the mat. Between the feet. Let's walk our hands behind our heels, placing our weight onto our hands, and maybe lift this right foot in and bring it up to your heart. Maybe you lift the left foot in, bring it up to your heart. Maybe you lift both. Maybe you just find this little, like a Malasana squat with your hands underneath the legs. If you can't lift the feet, that's fine. If you can lift the feet, this is our Bhujangasana pose. Maybe you can cross the ankle, hooking one leg or the other, finding a pose that works for you. The goal is to put as much weight into the hands as works for your body. So if that's here, that's fine. Let's place those soles of those feet back down to the mat. Lift those tailbones overhead, keeping those hands behind the heels. See if we can reach our hands behind our back and reach for the hips. Maybe binding the hands. Probably won't bind them, but you can reach and imagine that you could. Opening those shoulders, breathing into those shoulders. Exhaling to release, hands coming back down to the mat. Let's walk our hands forwards, reaching as far in front of us as we can, lengthening that spine. And we can come to a seat, bring those sit bones down to the mat. Let's find our butterfly Baddha Konasana again and see how much more open our hips have become. The hips tend to be a place where we store a lot of our tension, and after a nice moon salutation, a lot of that tension gets to release. And we can notice all the strength from our core and our heart and our solar plexus, and keep those energy centers open, keeping a straight spine, lengthening that spine, lifting from the top of the head, hooking our big toes with our fingers and our thumbs. And exhale as we bow our heart to those toes. Keeping that spine as flat as possible. Exhaling all the way down. And inhaling back up to center. Sitting tall. Taking a moment to notice your breathing. Our hands can come to the outsides of the knees and bring them in. Let's cradle our right leg, left and right, pushing through the heel, flexing those toes. We can find the right hand grabbing the outside of that right foot. See if we can play telephone, lifting that foot to the ear.
Try not to collapse in the lower back as we lift up. Maybe you lift that foot all the way up. Using that right hand to grab the outside of that foot. Lift it up. Maybe take that left hand to the outside of the foot. See if you can thread your right hand underneath the front or the back of your right tricep behind the knee. See if you can kick that foot up. Push the foot into the hand and use your arm and your shoulder to lift that foot behind you. This is the sundial as you look up and to the left. Exhaling as we release. Cradling that foot and placing that outside of the left foot to the right hip. We're going to find a cow face bind after sitting tall. Hands come to our heart. Now into airplane. The left hand behind the head, the right hand behind the back. See if you can bind them. See if you can keep the elbows in line with the shoulders, stacked on top of one another. And when you find it, see if you can push the back of your head into that left forearm as you look up, opening the heart and bowing with a flat spine, with an open hip, breathing all the way into that right hip, trying to keep those hips even with one another. Maybe that left foot comes off of the mat. If you bow deep enough, that's okay. Exhale and release. Unwinding. Setting this right leg, the right heel, to the left hip underneath. And we'll cradle our left leg. This way is and that way is, finding each direction of our hip. You can have the left hand to grab that outside of that left hip and kick it up. Bowing into that hamstring as you point those toes. We'll play our telephone. That left heel comes to the mouth, the toes to the ear. See where that hip likes to open. Rock it side to side. Try to keep your weight equally on both hips on the mat, so you're not leaning too much to one side or the other. We'll kick this foot out in front of us. Expand and bow over the leg. Then that right hand grabs that outside, that left foot, that left shoulder, so you can get it underneath that left knee. And that back of that left thigh, kicking that foot up, trying to keep those hips even on the mat. Your weight evenly distributed from the bottom, kicking that foot out behind you using your leg muscle and your arm and shoulder to pull that foot all the way behind your head as you look up and to the right for the sundial. Taking deep breaths all the way down that right side body. And that side body long. Don't let that left side body collapse either. Keeping strong in the core. And we release, cradling our feet, rocking our feet side to side, and placing that left heel to the outside of that right leg, sitting up tall, finding our stability. Maybe hug that hip in as we lengthen our spine. Then we find our right hand behind the head, left hand behind the back. Binding those fingers. Gomukhasana, the cow face pose. Trying to keep those shoulders square with one another. Elbow and shoulder evenly stacked. Pushing the back of your head into the right forearm if you can. Keeping the spine straight as we bow into that left hip. Bowing, bowing, bowing. Trying to keep that back flat as you try to reach your nose for the mat in front of you. This is one of those poses that I feel you're tying the body into these knots so that when we release, the knots in the mind can come undone. So let's release our hands. Letting the shoulders set onto the back. Releasing our feet. We're going to find a happy baby pose. So we grab the outsides of those feet, roll onto our backs, and we can play telephone with one ear or the other, or both. Trying to keep that tailbone rooted into the mat. We can place our hands to our sides, bring those knees together, and let the knees fall over to the right, keeping both shoulders rooted onto the mat. Noticing the stillness of the pose. And then lifting those knees into our chest. And bringing the knees out to the left, keeping both shoulder blades again rooted. Reaching them through those right fingertips. Releasing tension. Bringing our knees back into our chest, rolling into a ball, giving yourself a hug. You've earned it. You can place your head to the mat. Lift those feet overhead. And try to bring your toes to the mat in front of you for the plow pose or hide the ears pose. Our knees come to the ears. Straighten the legs as much as you can. See if the toes will come to the mat. Find this forward fold. And then vertebrae by vertebrae, with the spine slowly released to the mat. Imagine yourself in a laying shavasana. With your legs out long, with one hand on your heart, and the other hand in your gut. Just notice the stillness of this pose, the stability, the ground beneath us, and the comfort in breathing. Find the ease and the effortless posture of laying. Take this moment just to be completely present, completely at peace, and completely fulfilled. We're doing in this moment everything that you need to do just by training the body, training the mind, to be conscious, to be aware, to be present, and to be free through this practice of yogasana. And notice the energy flowing between the heart, solar plexus, and the gut. Releasing any tension in the core. Letting your stomach rise and fall with each exhalation and inhalation. And finding beauty in the simple beating of your heart. It gives me so much joy just to hear the heart beating. Just to feel your own breathing with gratitude for every breath that we are gifted to be alive. We can begin to wiggle our fingers and our toes, gratitude that we have fingers and toes. How wonderful is that? We can bend our knees into our chest, giving yourself one more big hug, rolling over onto the right side body, using that arm as a pillow. Taking a full respiration, feeling renewed and reborn through this practice. And placing your hand onto the mat, pushing yourself up into a seated posture with your hands at your heart and your eyes closed. I'm so grateful that we have this time and this space and this ability to practice together in this day. I'm so grateful for all of you for joining us to share this energy and to follow this practice together. The love and light in me honors that love and light in all of you. Namaste. Thanks, everybody. This was wonderful. I'm so glad we got to practice together.